What's up guys, it's Kayla.
And Jim.
Welcome back to another Meteorology Monday. What are we talking about today?
Today we are going to do a case study on the May 22nd, 2011 Joplin, Missouri EF-5 tornado. This tornado wound up being the deadliest tornado in 60 years in the US at the time, and it also wound up being the 7th deadliest tornado on record.
And this tornado also occurred May 22nd, that is less than a month after the 2011 super outbreak that took place April 27th of 2011. There is also, if you haven't seen already, a new documentary on Netflix called The Twister Caught in the Storm, which is a documentary on the Joplin tornado, which we'll talk about a little bit more at the end of the video after we've gone through kind of what happened that day, but highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already.
And we'll get into more details in this case study, but before we get started,
if you find that you are enjoying this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below so you never miss the next Meteorology Monday.
now let's take a look at the meteorological setup for this event. On the afternoon of Saturday, May 21st, 2011, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma issued a Day 2 convective outlook, which indicated a slight risk of severe thunderstorms over a broad area from the southern plains through the Ohio, Tennessee, and mid to upper Mississippi valleys for Sunday, May 22nd. Although the amount of forcing was not predicted to be strong, the weak troughing higher in the atmosphere, along with convergence, would be sufficient to initiate storms later that day. Weather models predicted CAPE values in excess of 4,000 joules per kilogram and a deep layer shear around 40 knots for May 22nd. This would allow any storms that did fire to quickly evolve into supercells. Very large hail was expected to be the primary threat. However, SPC was closely monitoring the situation and would be ready to upgrade the risk level if greater storm coverage became apparent. In the early morning time frame on May 22nd, the Springfield, Missouri National Weather Service office issued their area forecast discussion. In the discussion, they stated, "Mother Nature continuing to hold the cards quite close to the chest this morning, as persistently stubborn upper-level pattern plagues the region. Forecast concerns remain convection and associated severe weather chances and QPF, as confidence remains well below normal." They did observe that an outflow boundary from the previous day's storms would line up near the US 54 corridor in central Missouri later that morning. They continued, "As richer moisture returns to the area during the day today, suspect that this boundary will serve as an initial forcing for convective development. EML and associated steep lapse rates will remain in place above aforementioned moisture return, yielding a moderate to strongly unstable atmosphere over the area by mid-afternoon today. Along with moderate to strong instability, mid-level flow and resulting bulk shear values will be sufficient for updraft organization, yielding organized convective clusters along with occasional supercells. Very steep lapse rates point to large hail, perhaps very large in some instances, to be the main threat, and remaining mid-level dry air is suggestive of healthy wind gust potential. Tornado threat remains very much in question, as low-level shear values remain rather low for much of the day, and low-level flow veered. Best tornado potential will likely occur towards sundown as low-level jet begins to interact with still surface-based storms. Tornado threat will also be relatively higher with any cells that are able to ride along the remnant mesoscale boundaries."
By 7 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Sunday, May 22nd, a vertically stacked low-pressure system was located over South Dakota, with a cold front extending southward into the southern plains. Temperatures and dew points were already in the 70s into Oklahoma, with slightly lower dew points into southwestern Missouri. A large amount of warm and very unstable air was located east of the cold front. By 7:55 a.m. Central Daylight Time, SPC forecasters realized that a more intense weather outbreak was likely to occur, and upgraded a large section of the Midwest to a moderate risk. They said, "Both the cold front and the dry line will serve to focus intense thunderstorm development later today into tonight. Given the degree of both instability and shear present near the boundaries, some of the storms likely will yield very large hail, tornadoes, and damaging wind. Very rich Gulf moisture with low 70s surface dew points and precipitable water around 1.75 inches will persist/spread northward across the southern half of the plains today, beneath broad, steep mid-level lapse rate plume associated with southern stream westwardly flow EML. Coupled with strong surface heating, setup likely will yield a corridor of very strong instability with SB Cape up to 6,000 joules per kilogram along and ahead of the dry line/cold front from south central Texas northeastward into southeastern Kansas, southwest Nebraska, and northwest Arkansas by late today. As the morning wore on, a short wave formed over the central plains due to the strengthening trough approaching from the west. Very strong storm development was expected over the next few hours as the dry line was forecasted to intersect the cold front over Kansas. Confidence continued to grow that a major severe weather event would unfold later that day. SPC issued a public severe weather outlook around 11:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time, which stated that severe weather was expected that afternoon, now including tornadoes and strong damaging winds in addition to very large hail. The morning soundings from Springfield, Missouri showed the potential for explosive thunderstorm development that afternoon, noting very moist boundary layer, steep ML lapse rates, and 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram of ML Cape. With this and the placement of the left exit region of the jet streak, a region known for rising motion and therefore increased thunderstorm development potential, laying over northeastern Oklahoma into Missouri, the town of Joplin now sat squarely within the crosshairs.
Around 1:06 p.m. Central Daylight Time, SPC issued Mesoscale Discussion 853 concerning the severe potential and noting that a tornado watch would be issued shortly. They said, "An extremely unstable air mass has developed east of the dry line with dew points near 70 degrees Fahrenheit beneath steep mid-level lapse rates. Nearly all convective inhibition has been eroded, thus expected cumulus along the dry line to erupt into intense supercells. Extremely large hail is likely, and although low-level shear is a bit marginal, it will be more than sufficient for tornadoes given extreme instability." Around the same time, the Springfield, Missouri National Weather Service office issued their own mesoscale convective discussion. They mentioned that the cold front was pushing into northern Missouri and extended southwest into Texas. Ahead of the front, across northern Missouri, the air mass was unstable but capped, preventing storm development. However, the cap was weakening due to the heating of the day. With the cap eroding, the front would have no problem forcing warm, moist air aloft, leading to rapid development of strong thunderstorms. In the southern portion of the Springfield warning area, the cap remained in place for now, but would begin to crumble as the afternoon unfolded. At 1:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time, SPC issued a tornado watch for southwestern Missouri until 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The watch predicted explosive thunderstorm development with a strong tornado or two possible. Between 2 and 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time, thunderstorms began developing over southeast Kansas. As predicted, due to the very unstable environment, the storms quickly became severe. Around 3:48 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the Storm Prediction Center issued Mesoscale Discussion 862 concerning the tornado watch over eastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, and southwestern Missouri. Thunderstorms along the dry line from western Missouri to southeastern Kansas were intensifying. The 19Z Springfield sounding showed MU Cape values over 5,000 joules per kilogram, 40 to 50 knots of mid-level flow atop veering low-level winds. This was higher than initially predicted and more than sufficient for the formation of supercell thunderstorms producing extreme hail and tornadoes. Around 4:25 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the National Weather Service in Springfield issued a tornado warning for northwestern Cherokee County and southwestern Crawford County and southeast Kansas. National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated a tornado 5 miles west of Sherman or 8 miles north of Oswego, moving east at 25 miles per hour. The storm was also capable of producing baseball-sized hail. Over the next 20 minutes, the storm continued on its track eastward into western Barton and Jasper counties. Winds in excess of 60 miles per hour, tennis ball-sized hail, and tornadoes continued to be observed and associated with this large storm. At 5:05 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated a tornado 10 miles west of Carl Junction, or 6 miles east of Columbus, moving east at 30 miles per hour. The storm continued to produce funnel clouds and tennis ball-sized hail. At 5:09 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the National Weather Service in Springfield issued a tornado warning for western Jasper County in southwest Missouri. This would include the northern side of the city of Joplin. Within minutes, a new tornado warning was issued for a separate storm moving into northwestern Newton County, southwestern Jasper County in southwest Missouri, and southeastern Cherokee County in southeast Kansas until 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time. National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated a tornado forming near Riverton, moving northeast at 40 miles per hour. Many towns lay in the path of this storm, including Baxter Springs, Galena, a portion of Interstate 44 between mile markers 0 and 13, and the city of Joplin. Once the warning was issued, tornado sirens blared in Joplin, giving residents roughly 20 minutes lead time to prepare.
Around 5:34 p.m. Central Daylight Time, the tornado touched down in Newton County, Missouri, 1/2 a mile southwest of the South Central City Road and the 22nd Street intersection, just east of the Missouri-Kansas state line. Many eyewitnesses and storm chasers reported the tornado having multiple vortices rotating around the parent circulation. It was at this time that the tornado was at an EF-0 intensity, knocking over several large trees. Moving east-northeast through rural areas of the county, the tornado strengthened to EF-1 intensity, snapping trees and power poles and damaging outbuildings. The tornado continued to widen as it moved into the more densely populated southwest corner of the city near the Twin Hills Country Club. Several homes were heavily damaged at a nearby subdivision. As the tornado moved just east of Iron Gates Road, numerous homes were destroyed, and multiple vehicles were tossed into homes by the ferocious winds. Just before crossing South Skifferdecker Ave, the tornado suddenly increased to EF-4 intensity. At 5:38 p.m., the tornado grew into a massive wedge shape, crossing South Skifferdecker Ave and causing EF-4 damage to several small, well-built commercial buildings. One person was killed after they were ejected from their car while the tornado crossed the road. The monstrous tornado continued east across southern Joplin, causing EF-4 and EF-5 damage, flattening numerous homes, businesses, and medical buildings. The winds were so strong that even steel trusses and main support beams were deformed or twisted. Many vehicles were thrown, mangled, and wrapped around nearby trees. Numerous heavy objects, including concrete parking stops anchored with rebar, were torn from their foundation and flung tens of meters away. The damage became widespread at and around the St. John's Regional Medical Center. Winds exceeding 200 miles an hour caused nearly every window on 3 sides of the building, interior walls, ceilings, and part of its roof to blow out. 5 people on ventilators would lose their lives at the hospital as the power was knocked out and backup power lost. Vehicles parked in the parking lot were tossed up to 114 meters away. Down the street, almost every house near McClellan Boulevard and 26th Street was leveled, some completely swept away, and trees were significantly debarked. Trained weather spotters continued to notify the Springfield National Weather Service of a damaging, multiple vortex tornado still on the ground, moving east through Joplin at 45 miles an hour and dropping baseball-sized hail.
The tornado maintained its EF-5 strength as it crossed Main Street, Route 43, between 20th and 26th Streets, tracking just south of downtown Joplin. Neighborhoods were leveled or swept away, trees completely debarked, and in some areas, concrete porches and driveways were torn up from the ground. Vehicles were thrown several blocks from their original location. Even after the storm passed, some homeowners would never find their vehicles. Other buildings and institutions that were destroyed during that time were the Greenbrier Nursing Home, the Franklin Technology Center, St. Mary's Catholic Church and School, and Joplin High School. Despite it being graduation day, fortunately, no one was at the high school at the time that the tornado came through, as the graduation ceremonies were held earlier that day at Missouri Southern State University. As the EF-5 tornado continued its track eastward, it crossed Connecticut Avenue, destroying several large apartment buildings. 14 people died here. A Dillon's grocery store and a bank were also in the crosshairs and were destroyed as well. Only the concrete safety deposit box vault remained standing at the bank. The tornado then crossed Range Line Road, which is the main commercial strip on the east side of Joplin. Additional neighborhoods along 20th Street were affected. The devastating tornado would continue its rampage between 13th and 32nd Streets, still producing EF-5 damage. It would reach its widest point here at nearly 1 mile across. Striking a Pizza Hut on South Range Line Road, it would claim the life of the store manager, Christopher Lucas, who took quick action to move 4 employees and 15 customers into the walk-in freezer. Unfortunately, the freezer door was difficult to close, and he held it closed using a bungee cord wrapped around his arm, trying to protect those in the freezer with him. He held on as long as he could until he was ultimately sucked out and killed by the tornado. As it continued on, the tornado completely destroyed a Walmart supercenter, a Home Depot, and other businesses and restaurants. Many of the buildings were flattened and their supporting structures like metal roof trusses tossed into nearby fields. Cars and tractor-trailers were thrown hundreds of yards away. The force of the wind was so strong that it scoured asphalt from the parking lots and picked up 100-pound manhole covers. 20 people in this area of Joplin lost their lives. The tornado continued to tear through southeast Joplin. Many houses and commercial buildings were completely leveled in this area, and nearly every building in the industrial park was destroyed. Several heavy industrial vehicles were thrown up to 400 yards or 370 meters away. Further to the east, many homes in a nearby subdivision were destroyed as winds decreased to EF-3, EF-4 strength. The East Middle School would sustain major damage. As the tornado turned east-southeast towards I-44, it continued to weaken to EF-2, EF-3 strength. However, vehicles were blown off the highway and mangled near the US 71, Exit 11 interchange. It weakened further to EF-0, EF-1 strength, still damaging trees, mobile homes, outbuildings, and framed homes. The disastrous tornado would eventually lift and dissipate east of Diamond, Missouri, around 6:22 p.m. Central Daylight Time.
In summary, the tornado was on the ground for 48 minutes. The total track length was 21.62 miles. The maximum width was up to 1 mile at its widest point. Maximum wind speeds were estimated to be between 225 to 250 miles per hour, EF-5 strength. 158 people lost their lives, making it the deadliest tornado of 2011. Over 1,150 people were injured. According to a FEMA study, 8,264 homes were impacted, and of those, 3,884 were significantly damaged, and 4,380 were completely destroyed. 20,000 people were without power as the storm damaged 4,000 power poles, bringing down 110 miles of power lines. Over 15,000 vehicles were destroyed, many crushed beyond recognition. Damage to some level occurred to about 75% of the city. According to the local branch of the American Red Cross, about 25% of Joplin was destroyed. Total cost of the damage in 2011 was $2.9 billion or $4 billion today. At the time, the Joplin tornado was the single most costliest tornado in U.S. history. The Joplin EF-5 was the 5th out of 6 total EF-5 tornadoes that occurred in the year 2011. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers determined that the amount of debris from the Joplin tornado was estimated at 3 million cubic yards, an amount sufficient to cover a football field 120 stories high. Medical records that were contained in St. John's Regional Medical Center were found as far away as Greene and Polk counties.
So let's talk about some of those highlights in the summary. Incredible. One of the things that stands out, I mean, obviously between the strong winds and all of its impacts, but just the details like how many miles of power lines were down. How much when you stack up all that debris, it covers a football field 120 stories high. Those kind of things just blow my mind. It's hard to comprehend sometimes.
How far away they found those medical files. That's what, like 2 counties over? I'll pop up a graphic on the screen with how far exactly that is, but just insane, like how far away some of this damage from the city of Joplin was found.
Now, there is some discussion that there may have been a few more deaths, I think, as time went on since the initial survey. There might have been a couple of others, indirectly or directly. But then there was also some discussion that they were just observing EF-4 damage. But the National Weather Service went in and found EF-5 damage in certain areas, especially around the St. John's Regional Medical Center and that area. And there's some factors that they used to come to that EF-5 status. There was a sufficient study done by the Springfield National Weather Service to indicate it was an EF-5.
Yeah, and it was one of 6 that year. The 2011 super outbreak took place around April 27, just less than a month before that. And out of all of the tornadoes that happened in April, the Joplin tornado was still the costliest one to happen in the entire year.
The other thing that I found was staggering was the cost. And
Yeah.
I remember, I want to say it was the 1999 Moore, Oklahoma tornado, where they said that damage there was about $1 billion. And it was like the first $1 billion tornado. That was staggering at the time, because back then in 99, everyone was familiar with millions of dollars, but billions, starting to throw that terminology out there, that was becoming new, especially when it came to storm damage, other than hurricanes. But I mean, when it came to tornadoes, we weren't quite in the billions yet. And now here we are to 2011, so you're talking 99 to 2011, a decade later, $2.9 billion. So we went from $1 billion tornado in 99 to now in 2011, we're talking almost $3 billion in damage. It's just incredible. Of course, there's other factors. The cost of things went up, but just staggering that now we've got tornadoes that are actually causing billions of dollars of damage.
Yeah, and this goes into a whole other discussion about how tornadoes are hitting more places or seeming more frequent nowadays because there's so many things built up in that area. Back 50 years, there were less people living in tornado alleys, just houses spread out instead of the large cities that we see like Oklahoma City, Joplin, and other places like that. So for these tornadoes to continue going across the Great Plains, now with these cities in the way, the cost is going to keep increasing, and unfortunately the lives lost as well. Now, with everything that did happen that day, I thought it was interesting to note that the city of Joplin did have a 20-minute warning time before the tornado actually crossed into town due to the storm producing a tornado farther away instead of dropping it right outside of town and doing its damage. So a little bit of warning time there compared to some of the other tornadoes that we've done case studies on.
And in addition to that, you had storm chasers
giving
ground truth to the National Weather Service office, and then they could relay those warnings, very accurate warnings, out to the public. So a total effort on everybody's part to warn about this storm.
And that segues pretty great into the documentary that we brought up at the beginning of the video. If you haven't seen it already, it is on Netflix. It's called The Twister Caught in the Storm, and it gives real-life accounts from people who survived the Joplin tornado and really gives an in-depth look into how the day started, what went on as the tornado was tearing through town, and then the aftermath of it as well. So there you have it, the May 22nd, 2011 Joplin, Missouri EF-5 tornado. Again, if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like, subscribe down below so you never miss the next Meteorology Monday. As always, follow us over on Instagram, Facebook. We post a lot of our weather adventures there. We are coming up to storm chasing season, so you don't want to miss out what we will be posting over there. If you would like to help support the channel, check out our Patreon page. And of course, we can't forget to mention School of Weather. We have a series of online courses where you get to see our faces talking about the beginning entry-level stuff, definitions that you'll see in meteorology all the way up to how storms form. So if you are ready to take your weather knowledge to the next level, it is the top link in the description box. Until next time, I'm Kayla.
And I'm Jim.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you at the next Meteorology Monday.
Nailed it. All right.
Boom!